Hello there, heroes. I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to another Power Rangers HyperForce session review. I believe I have corrected for the time anomaly that is caused by reviewing a show about time travel. I hear Doctor Who fans have a lot of problems with this, so we seem to be back on track now. Is Jack the Yellow Ranger dead? Or can the heroes bring him back from the brink? Let's find out by taking a look at the third session of HyperForce, A Very Scary Library. The session actually started with a couple of quick notes that I thought would be important to mention here as well. The first is that on Friday, Peter Sudarso, who is either Preston or Marv, depending on which show you prefer, and I sure know which show I prefer, played fans on the Hyper RPG channel in Power Rangers Legacy Wars. Now, this video was filmed before Friday, but it's being posted after Friday, so I don't know how that went just yet, or if that's going to be a regular thing, but that's something that you can check into now. Also, HyperForce is getting its own Legacy Wars alliance. Actually, later on in the stream, they pointed out the irony of it being called the HyperForce Alliance, but that's something you can look into as well. Energy gifting from the metagame is now live, and again, to quickly explain that, when you're looking at the Twitch stream on the desktop, you can scroll down, and there's a little game down there where you can pick a ranger and send them on some missions to gather energy. I believe it's that for every 100 points of energy you gather, you can send 1 energy point to the ranger of your choice. The Rangers were actually incredibly excited as the game started, and they saw a huge influx of energy to each of them. They did say this system is going to require a significant rebalance because the game ended up getting about, 10 times as many players as they were expecting. But it's still something that's a lot of fun. Also, the players have started wearing their morphers to the session, as we saw in the intro. As Jack's heart stops, the Rangers gather around him. The ship is still getting pummeled, and Eddie asks if there are shields. Alpha reports that the shields are failing quickly. Battery backups kick in and restore power, and Marv starts doing CPR on Jack, with Chloe giving him an inspirational speech about there still being donuts to eat. Vesper thinks to rig up some kind of defibrillator, but then she rolls so well that she just finds one right there. She's able to figure out how to use it and uses it on Jack, bringing him back from the brink of death. Alpha gets him stable, so the Rangers focus on the attack. Eddie remembers that time ships have battle stations in order to operate their weapons, and Alpha displays where they are. One of them is actually just outside the med bay, so Marv sends the other Rangers to the central stations while he takes a moment with Jack. He tells the still unconscious Jack that whatever happened in the past, he forgives him and then goes to his battle station. The Rangers take the battle stations and try to locate the enemy ship, before realizing there is no enemy ship. The Alliance leader is firing on them from the ground. This creates a couple of problems. One is that time ships are not designed to fire on ground targets. The other is that even if they are, Alpha has moved the ship over the mountains, and anything firing from the time ship could cause a landslide that would damage the city. Vesper decides they should just fly the ship down and try to ram the Alliance leader, but he keeps shifting positions and they can't lock onto him. Worse, the ship is still losing power, so now in their lower position, they're basically stuck and can't go anywhere anyway. Marv wants to just lower the ship's ramp and kind of smack the Alliance leader with it, but Chloe finally tells him off for rushing into these battle situations without thinking things through and having a plan. Meanwhile, Jack comes around and wakes up, also recovering to 25 HP, by the way. He gets up and starts looking around for his weapons. He can't seem to find them anywhere, so what could he possibly do to get access to weapons very quickly? Oh, right!
HyperForce! Yellow! Ready! Power up!
Meanwhile, the other Rangers are still basically of the Thunder Ultrazord Chariot mode, kind of splat the monster mindset, wondering if they can move the ship further down or even just cut the power and drop the ship on the leader. Chloe seems to be the only one actually thinking like a Power Ranger, wondering if it's finally Zord time. However, Malika says, no, it's not time for Zords just yet. Jack keeps looking around and manages to find the Vortex weapons that they found earlier at the academy, bringing them to the hatch and meeting with the other Rangers, who are all happy to see that he's up and about. They open the hatch and see the Alliance leader forming a very powerful electric lightning attack, but he's not looking at them. He's looking past them into the ship. Malika took a moment at this point to mention that some of the commenters in the chat, on the YouTube videos, etc., had been asking her to describe this Alliance leader in more detail, probably to draw fan art. So she says that he's about 7 or so feet tall, wears large, bulky shoulder armor with a dark cloak and a hood that hides his face so you can't see it at all, and he's got bandaged hands that cover bloody flesh. The Rangers form the Vortex Blaster and do a very good job of it too. They roll a team roll of 23, and they had supered it before that, so 25 out of a possible 32. The Alliance leader fires his blast into the ship, hitting the engine. The Rangers' blast hits the Alliance leader and he staggers back and clutches his side. The team decides to fire again, but this time they only roll a 17, so the Alliance leader is able to avoid the blast. He tells them, "If you interfere again, you will die," before teleporting away. The Rangers are upset that he got away, but they do take confidence in the fact that they hit him this time. They head to the engine room to take in the damage, and it's bad. The Alliance leader basically vaporized their engine, turning it into a pile of black goo. Marv and Jack oddly take a moment here to bond, with Jack telling Marv that he did hear what he said about forgiving him, and that brings the two a little bit closer. Vesper fears that the team may now be trapped in 1994, seeing as the technology of the time is probably not going to prove to be much help to them. Vesper says that their cloaking device is still functional, so they have that much going for them, at least they won't be seen, and they wonder if maybe the other Time Force Rangers have been alerted and can come to help them. But Eddie reminds them that everybody but Jen is literally off the grid. However, the team chooses to stay optimistic. They may just be hiding, after all. They try to think of how they could possibly fix the ship, with Vesper even desperately suggesting that they dismantle Alpha and use its body parts to fix the ship. The rest of the team assures her the situation is not that dire just yet. They are still cloaked, safely up in the mountains, away from everything, so it's going to be alright for the moment. One thing they do realize is this is going to take a little bit of time, so Marv decides he wants to train to try and become a better leader. Alpha tells Marv that he's injured as well, and as a matter of fact, both he and Jack are displaying some strange energy readings that science cannot seem to explain. They realize that there may be a little bit of magic at work here, and Marv even remembers that there was once a team of Power Rangers that used magic. Yes, Marv, that's true. In fact, even later on, there was another Ranger that used magic. Thanks to a successful roll, the strange energy reading fades away, and they start to wonder if this might have had anything to do with the mind control that affected people at the Academy. Perhaps their morphers protected them from falling under the same fate. The groups decide to get to work, with Jack and Chloe working on disguises, Marv and Eddie training, and Vesper working on the ship. This triggers a montage, hey, Power Rangers is a TV show, where multiple people change places. Now during this montage, it's Vesper and Eddie fixing the ship and making a list of parts that they're going to need. Meanwhile, Marv and Chloe are training. Alpha reveals to the two that the ship has a pocket dimension that can be programmed to any scenario that they want. Chloe basically asks for the world of My Little Pony friendship is magic, clouds and rainbows and sparkles and sprinkles and etc., etc. Marv kind of goes with the flow here, saying that's fine. She can run around up in the sky on the rainbows and maybe even do a little bit of snipe. Meanwhile, he's going to be down on the ground fighting the Alliance leader head-to-head. They head inside. Well, actually, Alpha kind of has to shove them inside, and they see the Alliance leader. Marv wants him bigger, so Alpha makes him 2 stories tall. For the record, that is about 20 feet or 7 meters tall. The two of them do this.
HyperForce, ready! Power up!
HyperForce! Ready! Power up!
Marv misses a slice with his blade blaster while Chloe runs around on the clouds. Marv does a super lion blast and hits for some damage. The two of them try a team attack aiming at the leader's eyes, but they fall out of sync and miss. Malika realizes that she should get a turn here, so Alpha asks how the monster should attack. Marv says it should use black lightning bolts. They try running figure eights around its feet, but it manages to hit them anyway and they feel damage. That damage is not actually counted, however, since this is a simulation, so none of this is real. They team up to create a fire tornado attack, and Megan rolls double bolt sixes, creating a gigantic fire tornado that sucks in the clouds and the rainbows and the sparkles and the sprinkles and even gets the attention of the other rangers who come to watch as it hits the monster and the monster explodes. The next couple of scenes just kind of foster a sense of character development and ranger bonding. Chloe makes Jack a pancake burrito, which reminds him of time that he spent with his grandmother. Later on, Vesper pulls Eddie away from the replicator and thanks him for being such a good friend for her, showing him a wrench that she painted for him to look like him that says Ranger Buds on the back of it. Meanwhile, the replicator is exploding, spitting out nacho cheese and sprinkles all over the place, freaking the rest of them out. Later that night, Eddie and Chloe talk about the repercussions of changing history. Eddie is kind of concerned about it, channeling Katie a little bit if you think about it. But Chloe says what they're doing is actually fixing history, repairing mistakes made by bad people. She compares it to kind of erasing pencil off of paper and writing over it with new pencil. However, their conversation gets a little bit tense as the topic turns to Marv, as Chloe reveals that she feels a real bond with Marv, which is something that makes Eddie a little bit jealous. Meanwhile, Jack is in his quarters alone, doing his detective work, even whiteboarding the situation and connecting the dots with sprinkles. Trying to figure out why the leader came here. Why Angel Grove? Why 1994? What does he need here? Could this possibly be a trap? And that's when the sirens start going off. Alpha calls the Rangers to the main command center, saying he's detected a time anomaly. If Alpha is a he, I'm having a lot of trouble with robot pronouns. Break time!
HyperForce, ready! Power up! HyperForce, blue, ready! Power up!
HyperForce, black, ready, power up!
After the break, Alpha reveals that the time anomaly is that someone has disappeared from history. And it turns out this is no ordinary someone, it's actually a villain. The person who's disappeared is none other than Scorpina, one of Rita Repulsa's henchmen. At the moment, further history hasn't been impacted, but Marv explains that time is kind of like cement. Wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff, the stuff turns out to be cement. If ripples are allowed to harden and aren't smoothed back over, changes could result down the line. Alpha can't quite pin down where Scorpina was before she disappeared, but can pin it down to about 3 places: the park, the beach, or the library, because apparently Scorpina loved to read. I will say, I think a lot of Scorpina's character in this is based on an episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from season 2 or 3 that I don't really remember a whole lot about. Anyway, they realize they could be going back into battle again, so Vesper reveals that she has created brand new individual weapons for the team. She mainly used some of the extra metal that they've been scrounging up to fix the engine, as well as just a tiny little bit of the metal around Alpha's ankles, his socks, if you will. Or her socks, or its socks. I am going to say, just being totally fair here, that they kind of struggled with clarity in describing these weapons to the audience. They took a couple of shots at remembering to outrightly describe what these things were, but it just kind of felt like they were all very familiar with them already, probably from various setup sessions, and just didn't outrightly think to describe them fully to the audience. It might be something they fix in a future session. Jack gets a large sledgehammer type weapon that he kind of confused with an axe at first, that I would assume is called the Creus Hammer because he can reconfigure it, taking the head off and moving it over to the side to form the Creus Cannon. Vesper gets a 3-bladed axe weapon that can then fold together and form a battle disc like a shield that she can also throw. However, we didn't get a name for either weapon. Chloe gets the Hyperion Scythe that can be reformed into the Hyperion Bow. Marv gets a pair of clawed grips that can be formed together into a flamethrower, but again, we didn't get a name. And Eddie gets the Oceanus Trident, and he's able to pop the 2 blades off of the side and use those as the Oceanus blades. Alpha teleports the team to the library, which is the first place they want to search. By the way, I'm not entirely sure why they didn't split up to search the 3 different locations. I know you say never split the party in RPGs, but this is a Power Rangers show. The team it seems natural that the team would split up. Anyway, Alpha very strongly reminds the team that they cannot change history, even implying that they can't actually meet the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, who are currently off-world, but time's ticking and they could get back at any minute. Some have theorized that that places the events of this episode while the Rangers were off-world getting the Sword of Light to transfer powers from Jason, Trini, and Zach to Rocky, Adam, and Aisha. You might also remember that last session that I mentioned they met someone from Stone Canyon who looked very much like Rocky. The Rangers start searching the library for Scorpina, though Eddie reminds them that she is able to assume a completely human form. Again, I think that's from the episode that I mentioned that I don't really remember that well. I did look into this, and that was something that she was able to do, so okie dokie. They actually are also fascinated as they look around the library by things like paper books and large clunky computers that look like trash cans. Eddie and Marv see a girl sitting by one of the windows reading, and she bears a resemblance to Scorpina. They race over to talk to her and see that she's reading the Book of 5 Rings, which is a real book about battle tactics and swordsmanship that was written by an ancient samurai. She starts talking about with pleasure how the book details chopping body parts off of your enemies so they can't fight back as effectively, and the 2 of them are entranced. She takes an interest in Eddie, but basically tells Marv to buzz off. This makes things kind of awkward and tense between them as Eddie, who is pretty much under the effects of a love spell at this point, tells Marv that he hasn't really been that great a friend to him anyway. Eddie falls completely under the enchantment, which concerns the other Rangers. Vesper wants to just go fight the girl, but they manage to stop her from doing so. Chloe suggests a more subtle approach, that Vesper go up and simply pretend to be Eddie's girlfriend. Sabrina starts to reveal things about herself to Eddie. She's not your typical 90s girl. There's something special about her. That's when Vesper comes bounding in, screaming about, "Boyfriend, girlfriend, hello, strange person, this is my boyfriend." Sabrina gets a little fed up with all of this and reveals that she can see that the others are watching her. Eddie starts to tell them off, but suddenly remembers Vesper's Ranger Buds wrench, and he snaps out of it, telling Sabrina that these are his Ranger Buds. Oopsie daisy. Marv tries to back off from that, saying that they're forest rangers. Sabrina doesn't believe this, but does believe they're not from around here, and asks if they got the same offer from the dark figure. Chloe asks Sabrina what offer she got, because, hey, we got one too, we just want to compare notes, see if we're going to accept it. But Chloe says the offer doesn't matter. She turned it down. Because she will be the one to destroy the Power Rangers. Not Rita Repulsa, not even Lord Zed. At this point, all the windows go dark, the doors open, and a foul wind blows in. Marv tries to tell everyone that he's an architect, and this is a tornado warning, and this building is not safe, and everybody needs to evacuate now. But even his super 13 plus 1 convincing for charisma roll does not convince everyone to leave. A large figure wearing an apron and seemingly made of volcanic rock breaks in, and Sabrina walks across the library to talk to him. At this point, even though she never says so and she never really even transforms, Sabrina has more or less been revealed to be Scorpina. Marv tries the whole, no really, I'm an architect even though I'm wearing one shoulder off overalls and a backwards hat like all my other ranger friends here. I kind of didn't mention what they were wearing. Anyway, this time he does attract the attention of a little girl who is very scared about the whole situation. Marv remembers that they saw this little girl when they were trick-or-treating last time. He reminds the girl that she was a fairy princess and tasks her with the royal duty of getting all of her friends out of the building. The little girl is scared, but agrees to do so, especially after Chloe gives her a little bit of candy corn from Halloween. Some other people aren't moving yet, so Jack claims that they're about to film a music video in here, and everybody needs to clear out because his radical, wacky dance moves are going to knock over their stuff if they don't. Eddie moves closer to the bad guys to eavesdrop on their conversation. He hears Scorpina call this monster Volcanos, and the monster tasks her with retrieving the magical clay from Finster's workshop and then returning to the ship. The Rangers think about just blasting the two, but Marv realizes they can't destroy Scorpina because that would remove her from history. So Scorpina teleports away. Marv dashes past the monster and ends up behind it as it puts its hand on the ground and things start to shake and the wind starts to blow and things are getting really bad is what I'm trying to say here. The Rangers realize that only the librarians are left in the building. They try to get them out of the building, but the librarians are just too freaked out and will not move. This is a situation that kind of sucks for them because civilians are around, meaning it's hard to tell whether they can morph or not. Remember Marv's character development from earlier in this episode? Chloe telling him off for rushing in without thinking, that training in the pocket dimension to be a better leader? Out the window! Marv goes right back to his rushing in without thinking ways, trying to just drop kick this monster, and he misses. However, he does realize that he's behind the monster, so the librarians can't see him, and... oh! Volcano starts raising up creatures made of books and globes and bits of the library around them. This is basically a Rita Repulsa movie putty type situation. Marv pulls out his lion claws and does a super spinning strike which destroys one of the creatures. She does a super hurricane whirlwind and rolls a 3 on 2 dice, which only gets upped to 5. However, Malika also rolled a 5, so they've got to do it again. Chloe does a lot better this time, rolling a 10. However, Malika also rolls a 10. The GM gets the upper hand on the third roll, so all that Super Hurricane Whirlwind does is pulls more material towards Volcanos for his creatures.
Power up!
Eddie uses his Trident Spear to spear one of the creatures and send energy through the Trident, destroying it.
Power up!
You can tell at this point that the Rangers had more or less given up on trying to hide their identities from the librarians, since there were bigger fish to fry at this point. Volcanos creates a wall of books in front of him, but Jack's Ram Rage Rush busts directly through the books and even makes contact with Volcanos directly, hitting with his hammer.
Power up!
One at a time, everybody. She uses her blade disc with a super attack to take out some of the book creatures, but then Volcanos creates 5 more. He readily admits that these creatures are no match for these Power Rangers, but they sure can mess up those librarians hiding over there. Marv, Chloe, and Vesper decide to stand back and snipe at the creatures while Jack and Eddie do their best to get the librarians out of there. Unfortunately, they were doing a team attack and Marv's roll failed, so nothing happens. So Chloe and Vesper just decide to attack individually and each take out 1. Jack and Eddie try to do a piggyback attack, or I guess in this case a ramback attack, but Jack is too strong and Eddie is sprung off over the creatures. However, he manages to whip around with his trident and take out the last 2. Volcanos just walks away. Chloe gives chase, kicking the doors open, but Volcanos has vanished. The Rangers return to the time ship, and Chloe is frustrated that she wasn't able to catch the creature, but Marv encourages her, saying they can only worry about those things that they can control. The Rangers aren't really sure what they should do next. Jack even muses that maybe they should try to contact the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Just get themselves some allies in this time frame. With them not being sure what to do next, however, Jack says that their first plan should probably be returning to the library demorphed and helping to fix some of the damage that they kind of helped to cause. So the Rangers head back, and as they clean up, Marv pulls Eddie aside and says that he was right. He hasn't been that great of a friend. He tells Eddie this secret in his backstory. He did indeed used to be a Time Force officer. In fact, he was Jack's partner. He confided some kind of secret to Jack, but somehow the heads of the Time Force found out. Marv assumes that Jack told them, hence the I forgive you thing that happened earlier, and Marv was booted out. However, he was placed in a rehabilitation program that involved going back through Time Force Academy. Eddie thanks Marv for this partial revelation, didn't tell him what the secret actually was, and encourages him that, hey, he could have just quit right then and there, but he chose to go through the rehabilitation program, stick with it, and now look, he's a Power Ranger. The police finally show up at the library, and by the way, the librarians were hidden underneath the counter the entire time, didn't see a thing, identity safe. The librarians tell the police that their books somehow came to life and started attacking them, but then they were saved by a new blue Power Ranger. This session was definitely a tone change from the previous one after we get Jack back from the dead, with the Rangers focused more on character interaction and just some kind of fun scenarios. The Pocket Dimension especially was just a really fun way to make sure we still got a battle in that part of the episode, but without as serious circumstances as the fight before. And that character development was excellent and excellently done, as Malika nudged the Rangers into certain pairings that developed kind of connections between groups of individual people, as well as developing a lot of shipping fodder, I'm sure, but that's something else that you can't really ever control. If there was one drawback in this session, it is what I mentioned earlier. When you are streaming an RPG for people, even if you're very familiar with elements of it, such as, for example, your team weapons, you still have to make sure that you fully describe those things to the audience, especially to a Power Rangers audience that wants to know what everything is named, what everything looks like, what color is it, what does it do, how does it change, can they combine, etc., etc., etc. But don't worry, I'm not deducting very much for that, and if you think that's too harsh a criticism, watch one of my Ninja Steel reviews. A Very Scary Library gets 4.5 stars out of 5. That is going to wrap up another Power Rangers HyperForce session review. Thank you folks so much as always for watching. Make sure to like the video by clicking that like button right down below. In the comments below, let me know what you thought of this session as well as my review of it. Thumpers check in, say hi. Always good to see you folks over here on my channel. Subscribe to the channel to see all of my videos and make sure you ring that bell, get your notifications set up so you get notified whenever brand new videos, just like this Power Rangers HyperForce session review, go live. And if you would like to toss a little financial support my way, just throw a little bit of money into my tip jar. You can go to digitaltipjar.com/orangerangervid. Toss me whatever little bit of financial support you'd like to, and I greatly appreciate anything that you provide. Until next time, heroes, may the power protect you, and go HyperForce. But the time travel control is a ringing phone. They think to try to jump back into the time... No, they fire again. They head to the engine room to take in the damage and... Alpha tells Marv that he's injured as well, and in fact, both he and Jack are distributing... Lord knows what that word means. Everybody sets to work, with Marv and Eddie working on the training that they want to do. Now, during this and thanks him for being such a good friend for her. Alpha quite... I can say that Jack gets a large hammer weapon that At this point, all the windows go dark. The sun does a dance. He walks across the room to talk to him. That's what ad-libbing gets me. The other... So all the whirlwind does is just pull even more material towards... And if you would like to toss a little bit of financial support to my channel, just a little money in my chip jar, chip, fart. Okay, from the digital tip jar.